Well, good morning. I didn't realize I scheduled this during the Brazil game. What am I thinking? What was going on? You guys are troopers to be here, so thank you. We scheduled this actually like 2 months ago, I think, so I don't think we even knew. We're in the United States. We didn't even know World Cup was going to happen yet. So, well, thanks for being here. Just out of curiosity, how many people that are here are either a new American, refugee, immigrant, or the child of an immigrant? So yeah, maybe half, which is great. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. And for those that are not in that group, thank you for coming. And I hope you find this valuable. My message is not catered specifically towards this other group. But I want to make sure that in our community in Salt Lake that we're a place that welcomes and encourages and embraces every type of American that's here. All these different Utahns that are making an impact in our community. And so I hope everyone gets a chance to get to know each other and socialize and build a network amongst each other. How many here are currently running their own business, even if it's really small? Okay, so maybe half again. How many that didn't raise their hand are hoping to start a business in the near future? And then how many are thinking maybe at some point in my life I might start something? Okay, good. All right, well, that's great. So we kind of know who's in the room. That's great. So let's, I think one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about welcoming new Americans and helping embrace them into the Silicon Slopes community is because during my life I've had moments where I haven't always belonged. And when I was 4 years old, my family left the United States and we moved to Latin America. So I grew up in a number of different countries throughout Latin America, and I spent a lot of my adult life there as well. And as you can imagine, looking at me, I didn't fit in. I'm very pasty, and so I definitely stood out. And if you see, this is a picture of I can't remember what grade this was, maybe fourth or fifth grade. This was in Puerto Rico. My family lived in the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Ecuador, and then as an adult I lived in Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil. And I moved here from Brazil 9 years ago to start Cotopaxi. But I always was the person that didn't really fit in, and that looked a little bit different, that spoke a little bit different, that ate different foods. And sometimes that's hard. And I think some of you in this room probably know what that feels like a little bit. At the same time, it certainly shaped who I am. And I feel like I'm always looking for the person that's eating by themselves or that feels a little bit different because I understand how that feels. And so I think some of you in this room may understand that, and it'll make you a better person. And frankly, it'll make you a better entrepreneur. And so I want to talk a little bit about this whole session is going to be around entrepreneurship. And I chose a number of different themes. But feel free to ask any questions you want. You're not interrupting to ask questions or to even go off topic a little bit. That's going to be okay. But I want to start by talking about co-founders. And so for those of you that have started a business, how many of you have a co-founder or have had a co-founder? So a good number of you. So let's ask a few questions. So what is the advantage of having a co-founder? What are some of the nice things about having one? Who wants to? Okay, so we'll give a microphone over here.
The ability to delegate and to kind of compartmentalize certain responsibilities so you don't have to worry about everything.
Great.
Being a lone wolf, I found a company alone, there's just so much in every area. The fact that you can go back and forth with ideas and delegate responsibilities, it's a huge benefit.
Shared responsibilities.
Yeah.
That's great. And can you introduce yourself, Saul?
Saul Leal.
Yeah. Okay, and your business?
My company is One Meta AI. We do all things artificial intelligence, and we start with natural language processing. Microsoft invested into the company. We went public 2 months ago, and we do live interpretation on the fly in 1/8 of a second and 95% accuracy.
Yeah, so Saul's got a pretty cool business, so thank you for your thoughts. And Spencer, if you introduce yourself as well.
Spencer Arnson. I just feel like the emotional sometimes of being the only one carrying all that is a lot. So having somebody else that you can empathize and knows and you can share that with, and that's super helpful because it can be a lonely journey, right?
Yeah, it can be lonely.
Yeah.
It's a heavy load as an entrepreneur. I did a LinkedIn post maybe a month ago where I talked about the last 19 years that I've had as an entrepreneur. I think I've had a pit in my stomach for 18 and a half years. So every once in a while you forget somehow, when you go to Disneyland with your kids or something, you might forget for an hour, but then you remember. And you're sick to your stomach a lot because there's a heavy load, there's a lot of stress. And so having someone, a co-founder that you can share some of that with is really helpful. Any other thoughts on why a co-founder might be great or helpful as you start a business? And
Beth.
Don't forget to introduce. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm Beth. I run the Mill Entrepreneurship Center. And I think the skill set, like you can't know it all, you can't be it all, but having somebody that has a skill set that complements what you bring to the table can just elevate the business quicker.
Great. So if you have different skill sets, you add something, each of you have a different set of skills or maybe a different perspective on the business. So that's great.
Oh, yeah, I'm Jaron Erickson. Just kind of building on what Beth said, I think perspective even. I think a co-founder can sometimes view your business differently than you see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable because I know for me, sometimes I can get one-minded on a track, but it's good to stay broad and flexible. I think a co-founder can really bring that skill set.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. All right, let's do one more. Yes. Yeah,
there you
true.
go. Thank you. I'm Albert. I'm from Spiff. You actually invested in our company. So,
yeah, I love Spiff.
I
love Jaron and love the good work you're doing, Albert, especially with Impact.
Appreciate it. Huge fan of Cotopaxi. So, but I think I'm actually not a founder. I'm a co-founder. And I think I see the perspective, the load that your founder actually carries is so much. And it's just huge. It's a huge load. And I think about this as a team sport. Like you're running a business, you can never really win playing it by yourself. You can't be a goalie and be a striker and a fullback if you're in a soccer team. So it's just there's no way you can be successful running it by yourself. So
Albert, great. Talk to me a little bit about founder versus co-founder and what that means.
Yeah, I think in our case, for example, Jaron personally, he's really the visionary of all the ideas, right? And the co-founder is really I think the main difference is the vision. You gotta be in sync with that founder as well, and the co-founder is kind of like your co-pilot and just seeing your blind sides because they're just so busy looking at different angles and. That co-founder role is really you have. I know it's kind of sounds cheesy, but each of your co-founders should have specific superpower.
Yeah.
That the founder may not have, but has the vision how to implement that using that co-founder's superpower. So
Great.
For us, in our case, it's there's 3 or 4 co-founders that has very very specific. They go really deep. I see founders sometimes they go horizontal. And a little bit deeper, but not as deep as your co-founders that can go really deep in some of the areas. So
great, yeah, this is really great. I love that you shared because it helps founders kind of see there's different ways to structure a co-founder relationship. It's not always 2 people or 3 people that started the same moment and had the idea together. Sometimes it's one founder that had this idea but brings in some really key people early in the business, maybe before they even have revenue. And those people make some sacrifices. They maybe quit their job or work for less money or whatever, and they can sometimes get co-founder status. So yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share really quick some examples of some experiences I've had and maybe some learnings that I've had along the way. So my first business that I started was a very random business called pooltables.com. It's exactly what you think it is. And we manufactured pool tables in China. It's the first time I'd ever been to Asia. I had the idea. I actually Googled pool table factory China and found some factories and thought, I'm going to sell pool tables on the internet. And so we flew to China, my cousin and I. We'd kind of been exploring some ideas together at the same time. We wanted to work together. We wanted to be entrepreneurs. And we were like in school, right out of school, finishing undergrad. And so this was one of the ideas that we kind of threw together. I had a friend that worked for eBay. And one night I was picking his brain and just saying, hey, like, who are some of the biggest sellers on eBay? And at the time, eBay was like a big deal. And this is kind of, I know Amazon existed, but it seemed like eBay was kind of the thing. And he mentioned all these companies that were selling different things, electronics and jewelry. And then he said, there's even like people selling pool tables. And I just thought, I could do that. I knew nothing about pool tables. But I just thought that's a simple product. It's just one single product. I don't need a lot of selection. I started tracking on eBay to see I could track every single listing of competitors or people selling pool tables. I could see what they'd sell for. And I just had a spreadsheet. And for a few weeks, I documented what pool tables were selling for. I had a pretty good idea. And then I started communicating with this factory, a few factories in China, and ended up flying out there. And I knew what I could buy them for. And within our first year in business, we did $1 million in sales. So the business worked. And back in 2004, $1 million was like a lot more than it is today. $1 million now, it just feels like nothing. It's crazy how the world's changing. But we built this business together for 6 years. And then we went to business school. And my cousin went to Harvard Business School. I went to the Wharton School. And while we were in business school, we started thinking, you know what, we want to go do something else together. So let's start sharing ideas. So we spent the first year in business school just sharing ideas with each other. We had a shared Google Doc and spreadsheet, and we just add ideas on this. And we ended up with about 60 ideas that were pretty good. Some were not as good as others, but we had 60 ideas the first year of business school. And then between first and second year of business school, you usually go do an internship for someone. We instead went out to Silicon Valley, and we spent the summer on Stanford campus working through these ideas, networking with other entrepreneurs, meeting investors. And we narrowed the ideas from 60 down to 4, and then he took 2 of the ideas, I took 2 of the ideas, and we kind of vetted them and tested them throughout the summer. And by the end of the summer, we landed on an idea that we were really excited about, which was a business called Jinda and another one called baby.com.br. And these 2 websites were selling baby products in Brazil and online. And so we moved down to Brazil when we graduated from business school. While we were in our second year of business school, we raised some money. We raised about $4.5 million in venture capital. And we moved down and started building this business. And it was Brazil Startup of the Year in 2012. And in a lot of ways was a dream come true. I was back in Latin America where I'd grown up. I was building this really exciting business. It went from 4 employees to 300 employees in like 18 months. It grew really quickly. But there were some real challenges in this business as well. And Brazil was not an easy place to do business. And sadly, this co-founder relationship with my cousin, we were like brothers. We built homes on the same street. We'd vacation together. We did everything together. We were inseparable. And at the same time, during this time in Brazil building this business, our relationship became fractured. And it's still, a decade later, like one of the saddest things in my life. And for a number of reasons, I decided it was time for me to leave. And I didn't want to damage this relationship anymore. It seemed like it wasn't getting better. I also, my entire life growing up in Latin America, I knew I wanted to use my life to find a way to help others. And I didn't know exactly how to do it, but I'd been encouraged to become an entrepreneur by a mentor, a man who had been a successful entrepreneur and had then used his wealth to go fight poverty in the Philippines. And I wanted to work for him. I tried to convince him to let me go work for him and expand to Latin America. And instead, he convinced me that I should become an entrepreneur and that I could make a bigger difference in the world as an entrepreneur than if I worked for a nonprofit. And so that was the path that I'd chosen, this path of entrepreneurship. But after 10 years, I was feeling really discouraged, feeling like I hadn't accomplished this goal that I'd had my whole life. And when I was in Brazil, I ended up having this idea to build a brand that was all about lifting others and using our profits to go support poverty around the world. And so I ended up getting the courage to leave. I was terrified. I was really, really scared. I was leaving everything that we had behind, all of my equity in that other business. I'd never started something on my own. I'd always done it with my cousin, and he's super smart and super charismatic. And I just thought, what if I fail? Like, is everyone going to think, oh, I used to think Davis was a good entrepreneur, and then now it turns out it was just Kimball was the great entrepreneur, and Davis wasn't really that great after all. Like all these crazy fears that I think we have as humans, insecurities and fear of failure. But I knew this brand needed to exist, and so I came back and started Cotopaxi, and I started building a small team around me, 5 other people that I needed to go help me build this brand. And the 6 of us, we called ourselves the founding team. And 2 of them I actually made co-founders in the business because those 2 actually said, I'll quit my job and work for free until we raise a round of capital. So they took a big risk, and they were putting a lot of time into the business. And so I think I'm missing one of my slides. I added it a second ago, but apparently it's not in here. But I had a picture of these 2 co-founders, Stefan and CJ. Stefan was a classmate of mine in business school, and had worked he's from Germany. He was in the German Special Forces, and then he worked for McKinsey, the consulting firm. Had worked, taken some time off from consulting to go work for a nonprofit in Indonesia. His wife is half Indonesian, half German, half Indonesian, and they lived in Indonesia, and he was helping getting kids off of fishing platforms and child prostitution and other things. Really incredible work. And so he's just so meticulous, and just added so much that I didn't have as a founder and that I needed, And so he was great. And then CJ Whitaker is an award-winning product designer. So we started designing a lot of our gear. And so they were 2 co-founders, similar to Albert. They joined as co-founders a little bit later, a few months after I kind of started working on the business. I'd already started raising capital and had some commitments, but it was still early. So let's maybe talk about this a little bit, about the co-founder, how this works. So what did I do differently with my first 2 businesses versus the second one, or this third one, the Cotopaxi versus the other 2? How did I choose my co-founders this last time versus the first time? Yeah, Jacob. Let's wait for the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jacob. The first time you have your family members, your cousins, and you don't want to burn the bridge, and the third time when you start a Cotopaxi, you select people who are talented, who are willing to sacrifice to this business.
Exactly. So the first time, I kind of chose my co-founder before I even chose the business, right? It was like, hey, I want to work with you. Let's figure out something together. And the last time with Cotopaxi, I identified the opportunity first, and then I kind of went to the drawing board and said, what roles do I need to fill? And who are the best people on the planet to go help me solve these problems? Well, I'm going to go find an award-winning pack designer, gear designer, CJ Whitaker. I didn't even know him. I found him on LinkedIn, reached out, and just said, this is what I'm trying to build. This is my vision. Would you come join us? And he said yes. And ultimately, people want to build. They want to create. One of my favorite quotes is by a man named Dieter Uchtdorf. He says, the desire to create is one of the deepest yearnings of the human soul. Inside of us, we have a desire to create, to build. And if you give someone an opportunity to join your startup and to help you build and create, there's a good chance you're going to get people willing to do it and to take some risks to do it because they want to be part of building. And so, yeah, I'm actually, in going through these experiences, I'm a believer that that's a better way to choose a co-founder than just finding your best friend or your cousin or your sister-in-law or whoever it might be. It's have your idea, then go to the drawing board and say, who do I need to go build this? Who is the best person I can go find to help me, that I'm going to recruit to help me go build this business and brand? And then you can have a very clear distinction. And Spiff is a great example. Like Jaron, it's like there's no question. Like there's co-founders, but it's like there's no question who the CEO is. Who's like the ultimate decision maker? Who's the visionary? It's like you know who it is. If you do it the other way, there's always conflict. There's always confusion around. Wait, like we started this together. Like we have this 50-50 equity. Who's the decision maker? Who's the CEO? Who's the boss? Like it gets a lot more complicated. All right, I'm going to move on to the next subject, unless there are questions, or unless you guys want to talk about this, or yes, let's get the microphone over here.
Aloha, I'm Losa.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
So my question is, you mentioned that there were 6, like in your founding team, or maybe
Yeah,
not
founding
founding, but
team.
your team.
Uh-huh.
How did the other feel about the 2 people?
Yeah,
you made
it's a good
co-founders?
question. I was really sensitive about this, but I think the distinction was, and I kind of opened it up to all of them and said, if you want to quit your job and work full time for an indefinite amount of time, I'll make you a co-founder, And if this fails, like you get nothing. And the other folks, they kept their jobs. They worked the nights and weekends. And I told them, you can keep track of your hours, and when we raise, I'll compensate you at a very low hourly rate for the time that you put in. And if we fail, you also get nothing. But they took less risk, and so they were putting in less time, they were taking less risk, and so everyone was kind of like, everyone kind of knew if they wanted to be a co-founder, what path they needed to take, and some people just weren't in a position or didn't have the risk tolerance to go do that. So yeah, and I'm not sure we did it perfectly, but like we have all 6 of us are really close, and only 3 of the 6 are still in the business, but we're all still close. We get together regularly, we have great relationships, so I think we did it pretty good, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dan. So is it a bigger pie or a bigger piece of a smaller pie? It feels like you were very open to the idea that I want to bring the right people in, and we can make this as big as we need, so you're not being selfish with that revenue and that share. So tell me a little bit about that mindset, because that feels a little rough. I don't know.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot about this and how to distribute equity. So I'll say, when you start something like I did the first 2 times, where you split your equity 50-50, you immediately, half your business is gone, right, from day one. The way I built Cotopaxi was different. Like I had 100% of the equity when I started, and I set aside like 30% of the business to go build a team. And then I used that to go bring in different people. And depending on the value they could add, and their commitment level, they got different amounts of equity. And so it was, I think, a better and smarter way to go build the business. And then over time, a lot of people in our company have equity. Where my first business, it was just kind of a bootstrap business. We never raised venture capital. My cousin and I owned 100% of the equity. But with this, with Cotopaxi, we have warehouse workers that have equity. We have people that have equity across the business. And so I think this is the future of capitalism, right? It's like not just one person getting all the upside. I think it's interesting to see how this has evolved. Like Patagonia is in our industry, really great example, and just I think a great role model of how to do business right. But it's very different. Like you probably all saw the announcement a couple months ago where Yvon Chouinard, the founder, created this new structure that basically allowed the business to exist in perpetuity, where it was committed to its mission. And they said they gave away the business to the planet, and that's the only shareholder now is Planet Earth. And so, brilliant. It was kind of unique though, because he built the business 50 years ago. He has 100% of the equity. He was the only shareholder. So over 50 years, no one else got any of that upside. The advantage is that he could make the decision unilaterally, whatever he wanted to do. That's more complex for me or for modern businesses that have a lot of different shareholders. So there's pros and cons, right? But I'm a believer that not just one person should own all the equity in something that's going well. So, yes.
My name is Will. The question is it possible, or companies that are kind of start as families, and there's context to this, right? Because I come from like my parents are immigrants here, and there's a lot of cultural you're talking with your cousins or your dad or your brothers or whatever, and it's like, oh, we'll start this together, and you know what I mean. So family businesses or co-founders kind of just you're born a co-founder in those kind of situations. Like,
Congratulations, by the way. Good job.
Is it possible to run a successful company with healthy relationships in that way? And I ask that because you have experience in running, you know what I mean, a company with families, or what are companies that are successful that you know what I mean have kind of family ties?
Yeah.
What are they doing? The successful ones. What are they doing right that maybe others aren't? Because it's hard out here for you know, to
no, it's a really
not beat
really
up your
great
brother
question.
type of thing.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, working with family is really complex, and having been there, and that was a cousin, which is a lot more complex than just a friend, because if a relationship with a friend fractures, like, you can kind of just go live your separate lives, but when it's a cousin, it's like, you know, we're connected forever. If it's a sibling or a parent, it's like even harder, right? At the same time, it can be really great. You know, co-founder relationships can be fantastic. You know, my co-founder at Cotopaxi, Stefan Jacob, he's our COO, the one from Germany. We've worked together for 9 years now. We've never had a single argument for 9 years. We love each other. And I just think he is the most amazing partner anyone could ever have. And I think what really, I think, set us up for success there was clear definition of roles, what his responsibility is versus mine. Number 2, humility, because it takes humility. He's an incredibly humble person. He's just as capable as I am, or more. And he's never jealous or upset or feeling like he's not getting enough recognition. And so, but part of my job is to make sure to recognize him and to help people understand the role that he's played. But it's always going to be different as the CEO and as the original founder versus like his role. And so I think having very open communication, there's a book called Radical Candor, which they used to give out here. I don't know if they still do. It's probably not anymore. They're probably all gone, but you should buy the book. It's a really great framework. We use it at Cotopaxi. Everyone that joins the Cotopaxi team has to read this book. And it helps you understand how to have a healthy relationship where you can challenge directly, but you have to care personally first. If people know that you love them, so Stefan and I were very close, like we've adventured together, we've traveled together, I'm his son's godfather, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I didn't even know what that meant. It was like, he asked me, will you be my son's godfather? It's like, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be the best godfather ever. And so, but, you know, we have this incredible, beautiful relationship, and we care so much for each other. Like when I tell him, when I give him feedback and say, hey, I'm noticing there's something that you can do better. And when he tells me, Davis, I noticed that there's something you can do better as a CEO. Like, we're not offended. It's like, I know Stefan's only telling me because he loves me. He wants me to be the best CEO I can be. And so I think it's important to go build those types of relationships. All right. Oh, yeah, another question. Yes.
My name is Eric. Listening to your story, your experience, it seems like it's a story of somebody that has a lot of experience running a business, raise capital, raise funds, and then leave or stop this business and move to another business and starting a new venture. So listening to that, comparing your experience to other entrepreneurs who are trying to get themselves into the business with not having any experience running the business or having a hard time to find a co-founder, because one of the toughest things, especially if you're trying to get into technology space, you need to find a technical co-founder. If you're not technical, it's really hard. So in that kind of situation, what will be the route to take when you are having a difficulty finding like the technical co-founder, somebody that can run the technical side of it?
Yeah, great. No, you're right. That as I've gained more experience and started different businesses, it's become easier. I make fewer mistakes than I used to, and it's become easier to recruit because I have a little bit of a track record. But when I built my first business, I had no experience. I didn't study business in undergrad. I studied international studies, which basically meant I was unemployable. But you know, I really loved the world and cultures and languages and all those things, but it didn't really help me a lot when I started a business. So I had to learn all of that. And so I think a few things that helped me were like showing up to these kind of things, meeting people, participating in events. And sometimes it's hard to do that because if you're an entrepreneur, you're thinking, man, I just need to focus in my business. I need to like crank on my business. I don't want to get distracted by anything else. That's a mistake. Part of working on your business is stepping away from it sometimes to go invest in yourself. And that might be coming to an event like this. It might be socializing at a Silicon Slopes summit, downtown. It's participating in things where you can get to know new people, where you can share your ideas and get feedback from other people, and where you can maybe discover a co-founder. I would also say LinkedIn is one of the most powerful tools. I would be spending time on LinkedIn, building relationships, connecting with people, sharing your ideas. So that would be my advice on starting to build what you need to be able to go have success as a founder. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Sam. I was curious, there's a lot of different opinions and theories out there about what's the right number of co-founders.
Yeah.
So I was a little, I guess, surprised that you had 6 at Cotopaxi. Why so many?
Yeah.
Was it you were assuming that not all of them would be like fully committed, or
Yeah.
like I'm curious about that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so just to clarify, we had this founding team of 6, but only 3, me and 2 others, got like co-founder or founder status. It's convoluted, for sure. And I've looked back and wondered sometimes, like, was that the right move? Would I do it differently? It's hard to know. I think that's kind of a lot. At the same time, like, I look back and those people played such an instrumental role. I like that they can say, even if they're not with us still, like, I was on the founding team of Cotopaxi. I was like one of the first 6 people to help build it from nothing. And I think we can be probably more generous than we are sometimes in sharing those things. Like, we can't be over the top, go too far, but those people were so important, and we hadn't done anything yet. Really, I couldn't have built it without their help. So I think I'm glad that I did it the way I did. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, this is a question from LinkedIn. This is Chris Hernandez. A lot of people speak of radical candor, but for you, how did you start practicing that and implementing it across the business?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think the most important thing we did is I made sure that our leaders in our organization understood what it was. So I read the book. I had my senior leadership team read the book, and then we were practicing it. And I have one great example. We have one of our leaders in our company. His name's Ren, and he leads our customer experience team. And Ren he is the disciple of radical candor. And his team does this better than anyone, and it's because of his leadership. And so as a founder, you can't be the only keeper of the flame. You need to have other keepers of the flame inside the organization. And so your job as a founder is to live and practice what you're teaching and get others to be able to understand it well enough that they're also living and practicing that as well. And so I think that's, hopefully that answers that question. That's a great question. Thank you. Okay, yeah, one other question.
I had a quick question about just like investing. What specific steps did you take to find the right investors for your business that focused on giving back to the community from the very start?
Yes, this is such a good segue because I wanted to go right into this next. So I love it. Thank you for the really nice question. So raising capital. Let's see if you guys can tell everyone, what are different ways to raise capital within a startup? Okay, let's get the microphone. Oh, yeah.
Angel investments or venture capital, friends, family.
Great. Okay, so these are equity investors, right? What they're doing, they're giving you money, and do you have to pay that money back? If the business works, you do. But what if the business fails? Do you owe them the money? You do not. It is not debt. You do not owe them money back. Unless the business works, then they get an upside. They can have a huge return on their money. But equity investors, they're taking a risk with you, and they're saying, I'm going to get some ownership, some equity in this business, and if it goes really well, I'm going to make a lot of money, And if it goes poorly, I'll get nothing back. And I can't go back to the founder and say, you owe me the money, because it was an equity investment. Okay, so you can do that through angel investors. Angel investors are oftentimes, they're people like me or others in this room that are founders oftentimes. A lot of times it's a small check. My first angel investments were like $10,000. Like I didn't even have $10,000, but somehow I was putting some money into some different angel deals because I was just so excited about it. As a founder, a lot of times you're meeting other founders before venture capitalists even know who they are. And you as a founder, you have an unfair advantage as an angel investor because you understand startups really well. And you know all these founders. And so it's an interesting opportunity for an entrepreneur. So a lot of times entrepreneurs can be angel investors. Sometimes you have the 3 Fs. Do you guys remember what the 3 Fs are? Friends, family, and fools, right? So you can go get those people to throw in some money, or venture capitalists, right? These are professional investors that go evaluate opportunities and take risk. In Spanish, it's called risk capital. Venture capital is called risk capital, and that's a great definition. It's capital that's at risk because you're going to hope to grow it. What's another way you can raise money? Yes, microphone's coming. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ivan. I was part of a startup. Now I'm an investor.
Great.
Talk
to him if you need money.
Crowdfunding platforms.
Great.
Somewhere
yes.
in between angels sitting next to you versus venture capital.
Yeah.
You can if it's your product is consumer facing, you can get a lot of people behind your product to promote on behalf of your product.
Yes.
And company. So that's a good option too. Besides the 3 Fs.
I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one because who's actually financing the business in that situation? Your customers. Like it's not debt. You don't have to pay it back. It's not equity. You don't have to give them any part of the business. These are the best investors ever, right? They're giving you money because you have a product that you make that they want. And so with Cotopaxi, we actually early in the business we would do these crowdfunding campaigns. We launched our best-selling product today, our travel bag, our Alpa travel bag. We launched it on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. I can't remember which one, but it was a great way for us to go test. And some of those tests failed. We had a couple products that we tried to launch in there. It was like within like an hour, we knew it was a bomb. It was like this is not working. And other ones we tried, we sold these like llama socks, and we sold some other cool stuff. Like it worked. Like they took off, and so we knew. So that's a great way because you're not giving up anything to do that, and you're actually building the business. So. Crowdfunding is amazing. When I started my first business, crowdfunding didn't exist. eBay was kind of our version of crowdfunding. It was kind of testing to see if customers would buy. There's some really great platforms that allow you to do that now. So that's a great one. What's another way to raise money for your business? So you have equity investors. How else?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sean, and I'm at a clean tech startup. We got a lot of non-dilutive funding from pitch competitions, grants from the government. They don't want any, you don't have to give up any equity, and they...
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is a great one. I think, Sam, you guys probably got some money that way too, I think, with your business. I know, actually, with my pool table business, we actually competed in a bunch of school business plan competitions, undergrad business plan competitions, and we won maybe $30,000 or $40,000, which for us was like a massive amount of money to help us get off the ground. Same with our business in Brazil. We were in business school. We won the Harvard Business Plan competition, and we got some money from them and a few others. So I've never gotten any government grants, but I know depending on your type of business, like that's an option as well. So non-dilutive money is fantastic because again, you don't have to pay that back, right? And they're not getting equity, so it's really nice. Okay, there's one more I'm looking for. One other way. Okay, let's pass the mic. Yeah, we've got a banker here. Great.
This is Dan, debt financing.
There we go.
Right.
So debt. Now debt's scary, right? Because you have to pay the money back. At the same time, sometimes that's an option that you have that maybe our first business, the pool table business, it wasn't something that a venture capitalist would invest in. Like this is never going to be $1 billion business. Venture capitalists usually invest in something that can be big, very, very big. That's their model. If you have a business that's going to end up doing, the pool table business does close to $20 million in revenue a year today. Like that's a good business. It's not something that a venture capitalist would ever invest in. It's not big enough. And so the way that we grew that business was we actually borrowed money from, well, first of all, customers. We started pre-selling products saying, hey, buy a pool table, we'll deliver it in 10 weeks. It's a 10-week lead time. And somehow some customers said, I'll do that. And so they had, they got a custom-made hardwood pool table, but they had to wait 10 weeks. And we used that money to finance the business. We also got my grandma to lend us $10,000. My grandma didn't have very much money. My parents and my in-laws both mortgaged their homes to help me get the money to go grow that business. This was very stressful. This is why I had a pit in my stomach for so many years, right? It's like they didn't have the money to lose, and so it was very scary. But that was all debt. And then we also got bank loans. We actually got a small SBA loan first through our local bank. It was like a $25,000 loan from the government, backed, through the bank, but backed by the government. And then as the business continued to grow, our bank started extending us larger lines of credit. And so we had this debt, but the advantage is what? What's the advantage to debt? Who said that? Yes, Spencer. So yeah, you own, as the founder, you still have all the equity. You didn't give up any equity. The downside is that you owe the money back. So if you fail and you got money from the bank, you're usually signing a personal guarantee saying, I'm going to pay this money back, and if I don't, you can take my car, you can take my house. It's really scary. But sometimes that's your only option. For us, that was really our only option. And so those are the different ways to raise capital. So if you have a small business and you're like, man, I need capital, those are really the options. And I think we've kind of hit on most of them. All right, any questions before we move on to the next subject? We've got quite a bit of content still to go through, but we can definitely talk about this a little more if we want to. Yeah, over here.
So when you are, Kevin, by the way.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, when you are asking for or proposing, for funding from private investors or angel investors, how do you decide how much your company is worth and how much to give away?
Okay, so if you're raising an equity round of capital, and so if you're raising debt, this isn't really something you have to worry about. You don't have to figure out what the business is worth. But if you're raising equity, you need to attach a valuation to the business, because if someone invests, let's say you have a business that's worth $2 million, and let's say you raise $1 million. How much equity how much ownership are they going to own? Any guesses? If your business is worth $2 million and you get another $1 million, how much is it worth now? 3. So that person now owns a third of the business. Okay, so that's how that works. But you're going to have to figure out what is it worth, and the investor and you are going to have to negotiate that a little bit. And so every business is very different. Cotopaxi would be very different, or a consumer brand very different from a SaaS company, a software as a service business. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to talk to other founders. You're going to go online and read about it. You can actually find quite a bit of content around multiples. And it's usually going to be a multiple of either your earnings or EBITDA, or it'll be a multiple of your revenue. Or if it's really, really early, sometimes it's not a multiple of anything. Like when Cotopaxi raised our first round, we had sold nothing yet. Like there was nothing to multiply times. But there was a founder that they believed in. There was a big idea that had a big vision, a big opportunity, and so we made up a price that investors and I agreed upon and said, okay, we agree that it's worth a certain amount of dollars. And when they invested their money, we raised $3 million before we'd sold anything. And those investors earn a certain part of the business they owned now because of their investment. So it's a little bit art and a little bit science. Hey, John. What's that, sorry?
How is that part decided? Like that $3 million that you initially got before you sold any product? That's
again, a negotiation. Okay. I pitched 100 different investors to raise that round. And so if I would have quit after 20 pitches, I would have got no money. You just have to keep going, so grind it out. And then once you get some competition, once you have 3 or 4 or 10 investors that are like, hey, we're interested, it can kind of drive up a little bit. Because you're like, hey, I've already got $1.5 million committed. I think I want to raise $3 million. Would you put in a little bit of money? We'll pool this together. And some people will drop out and say, yeah, it's getting too expensive for me. Others will say, I really believe in this. Let's do it. And so, again, it's just kind of cobbling it together. John, did you have a
quick question here, because I think this is kind of an important juncture of
both logic, where boots meet the ground, getting things done. What advice would you give to founders? Because we see this as a common issue right now, where they're raising money for a company, but they don't really know the value, and they're not sure if it'll even work. But the founders are gung-ho. They're all in.
Yeah.
And so what advice would you give on something that's you can be calculated, but there's also that, there's that belief as a founder, which if you didn't have, it wouldn't work anyway. The point is, in all, the question is, how do you really know that a business is going to work? What things do you have to have in place? What telltale signs and flags do you want to avoid, et cetera, so that it's always going to be risky, but that it's a greater, greater
Increasing your
ratio,
odds.
what are better odds for you, so that when you start talking about your family, giving, their savings and even mortgaging their houses, that's scary.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, not smart.
Yeah.
So what's the confidence quotient and maybe some of this mixture that young entrepreneurs and dreamers can really think on and bank on?
Yeah, so, really great question, John. Thank you. Maybe I'll answer this in a few different ways. So number one, with our pool table business, before we got my parents and my in-laws to mortgage their home, the business had traction. We'd done maybe $1 million or $2 million in sales already, and we were profitable from month one because we had to be. We didn't have a choice. We didn't have money to burn. And so, none of us came from money. And so, for them, it was kind of proof of hey, these are our financials. This is what we've done. This is what we're projecting we can do over the next year or two or three. But to do that, we're going to need additional capital to go buy inventory. And so that's kind of how we convinced them, was we convinced them that it wasn't too risky, even though it was. But hey, this business is working. It has worked. There's opportunity to grow it if we have a little more capital, and you'll get your money back. And they loved us. So that was love is a big part of that. Yeah, VCs don't love anyone. So VCs aren't going to give you money because they love you. With a VC, it's a little bit different. It's especially in the early days of a venture-backed business, a lot of times you don't have a lot of traction yet. So you can't go show them financials and say, hey, I've been profitable. We've grown, this certain way. But it's really about, hey, there's a massive opportunity, and this is how we've de-risked the business. We've got an amazing team. We've got people that have actually built things before, that have done this in this space before. And we've got enough traction where, hey, look, we've got a certain number of customers that we acquired really inexpensively. And they're using the product, and they're not ditching us. They're continuing to use it. And so you have to go find whatever metrics you can. And sometimes fundraising, you have to do it at the right time. So with the baby business in Brazil, we launched the business, and in the first month, sales were amazing. We had some really good press that happened. And 30 days into the business, we actually signed on a woman named Angelica and her husband, Luciano Hucchi. And they're like the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie of Brazil with no baggage. And they're an amazing couple. And they joined our team. She became our CMO, our Chief Mommy Officer. And she just basically every once in a while would do a social media post, would be the face of our brand. We did a big press conference with her and all all of the Brazil magazines and newspapers and TV stations, and they did this event with her where she made this big announcement where she was joining as our Chief Mommy Officer. And so we got all this traction, and then we went and raised another round. Even though we just raised a round not that long before, we went and raised another round because we had all this momentum. And so a lot of raising equity rounds, if you end up in that position, is timing. It's like when you have a lot of momentum, strike fast, because momentum doesn't last, and there'll be lulls. And if you try to raise during a lull, you're in trouble. So, yeah, Sam. Oh, sorry, we have one here. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm Emily. I actually work with BYU's Cotopaxi outreach team.
Yes, we've met. Yes.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Good seeing you. Love your fanny pack, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So I have a question. As we've talked so much about investment and gathering capital, I would love to know, as you face 3 businesses that are very individual in their own right, how have you allocated these funds? What are your priorities, and have these progressed and changed with each progressing business?
Yeah. So, every business has been different. I'd say with Cotopaxi, a lot of our investment, a lot of the money we make is actually invested in social impact. it's a huge commitment for us. Like a lot of years, we've given all of our profit, or sometimes more than we've even made. So that's a big part of it for me, and it's why I built the business. It's what I'm most excited about, and I also believe in it. I believe that if you do the right thing, that people will continue to support you. And so, for us, I say I don't see it as like a trade-off of like, okay, we're trading, doing good versus being profitable. We'll have a better business because of our impact work, and so we can acquire customers at a lower cost of acquisition because people are talking about us. They want to support us. They want to wear our product. We can attract and retain better talent because they believe in our purpose and mission. And so those are things that save us money. And then those dollars that we saved, we can go put back into impact work, and then it'll come back and do more good for us. And so that's how I think about this business. Previous businesses were different. In Brazil, a lot of the money we raised when I was there, $40 or $50 million. Like that money we used to go build team, to acquire customers. And obviously we're doing those same things at Cotopaxi, but maybe with a slightly different approach. So yeah. All right. Yep. Thank you for the question, Sam.
So I actually have a specific question about the allocation of investment as it relates to the baby business in Brazil.
Yeah.
Could you share the story of the domain name and the timing of the investment?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is a good story too. When we started the business, we were in business school. We had this idea, we're working on it. We started brainstorming business names, and we came up with, I can't remember, a lot of different names. And one of the names that we came up with was called Fraldas. Does anyone speak Portuguese? What does Fraldas mean? You don't know? Diapers. Yeah, diapers. Yeah. So there was a company in the US called Diapers.com, and I knew the founder. His name is Mark Laurie. He also started Jet.com and a bunch of other businesses. Has had huge success, and he also went to Wharton. So we had this friendship, and he'd built this amazing business in the US called Diapers.com, which sold not just diapers but all baby products. So we thought Fraldas could be cool. So we bought this domain, Fraldas.com, and I spent I don't remember anymore. It might have been 5,000, it might have been 8,000, I can't remember. Something that I bought this domain for. My very first venture capital pitch ever, right? We bought this name and we went to New York and we met with this investor that had invested a lot in Brazil. We give him the whole pitch, and he goes, "Why did you choose this name, Fraldas.com?" And we kind of explain it, and he's like, "Well, the thing is in Brazil, nothing's .com, everything's .com.br, so this domain is worthless." And it was like, "Oh yeah, we know that. It's just a placeholder." It's like we get in the elevator, we're like, "Oh my gosh!" We just wasted $5,000 or $8,000. We're sick to our stomachs, and so we go back to the drawing board, and one of our ideal names was baby.com.br, and everyone in Brazil knows the word baby. Justin Bieber sings songs about baby all the time. Everyone knows baby, so they know how to spell baby. Also in Brazil, there's a high affinity towards the United States and American products. And so the name in English actually was a really strong name. The problem was someone owned the domain already, but it wasn't being used. So we found out who owned it. We contacted him and we said, "Hey, we want to buy this domain." And he basically said, he said, I think it was 60 or 70 domains that he bought in 1999. And guess how many he'd sold? 0. That's right, 0. He'd sold 0. This is in 2010. So it was okay, we're out of luck. This guy's not going to sell us the domain unless it's really a really good offer. So we go to him and we say, "Okay, why don't we make a deal, and we'll buy this domain from you for a certain amount." Man, I'm trying to remember all the details of the story because it's been a while since I've told it. You've obviously heard me tell it a long time ago, probably. At BYU, yeah, a long time ago. So, but anyways, we negotiated some price with this guy, and we actually told him we'd give him. We told him we'd make monthly. This is what we did with the pool tables domain. We actually got the domain, and then we made monthly payments for a certain number of years. And we told the owner of the domain, if we ever stop making payments, the domain's yours. Legally, we'll make that in the agreement. So if we ever make a late payment, we miss payment, the domain's yours again. So we told the baby founder, the baby owner, the baby.com.br domain owner, the same thing. "Hey, why don't we pay you over time, And he basically came back and said, no, I'm not interested because there's too much risk. Like in Brazil, the courts are crazy. Like we don't know what'll happen. Like I'm not willing to do that. So he said, okay, well, if we gave you the cash up front, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't remember the exact number. It might have been $400,000 for a domain. It's like crazy. But we knew the power of a great domain. And so we thought, okay, if we can get him to sell it, this could be a big deal. And it could help us raise venture capital. Like, again, we create some momentum. And so we told him, hey, if we give you the cash, would you do the deal? He said yes. And it's like, okay, well, why don't we do this? We don't have the cash today, but we will have the cash in 90 days. Because in our heads, we're like, we're going to go raise money with this awesome domain. And so he agreed. And so we had 90 days. We gave him $10,000 to hold it for us, and we'd lose the $10,000 if we didn't get the deal done. And then we had 90 days to go close a round. And we went and raised $4.3 million for this round. And in large part because these people saw that we're scrappy founders, we had this amazing domain. And so it really helped us. So this is a lot about what entrepreneurship's about. It's like you don't have no resources, you have no money or very little, but you find some crazy way to create value in some way and create momentum that allows you to get more momentum and then raise a little bit more money and then more momentum. So yeah, thanks, Sam. All right, we ready for the next topic? Do we need to stand up and stretch for a second? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, everyone stand up. Give your neighbor a high five. We're gonna have Natalie. Natalie's gonna talk to us really briefly about something, and then I'm gonna kick things off.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly highlight a couple resources that
And you can introduce yourself as
Sure,
well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Natalie Aldieri. I'm with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. I work on immigration issues and new American integration. This is a brand new role within the state government, and within the business, the Office for Economic Opportunity, there are lots of different grants and credit initiatives for startups and technology and innovation, and Utah just got $69 billion that they're going to be distributing around the state for small business. It's the Utah Small Business Credit Initiative. I encourage you all to look it up at business.utah.gov to learn more about all of the different resources that we offer to businesses there. And of course, with my office at the Center for Immigration Assistance, we're there to promote strategies for new American integration as well. And one of those is around business and economic opportunity. So just wanted to plug that, that the state of Utah is a business-friendly state, and there are lots of resources that are available there.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate it. Yeah, you can, we'll take it back there. Okay. All right, we're going to move forward. The next topic. Sound good? Okay, so the next topic is going to be understand your customer. So let's just kick it off with a question. Why does this matter? Why does it matter? Why don't we just try to sell? And why do we have to figure out who our customer is? Thoughts? Yes. Oh, Mike, there we go.
Sorry about that. Because if you can't appeal to their needs and their interests, you're not going to be an effective company.
Great. So you can appeal to their needs and interests if you know who the customer is. You can actually cater and build your product around a specific person and their needs. Great. What else? Okay, we go here and then here.
My name is Kevin. I didn't introduce myself last time, but it'll probably help you also with your pitch, explaining to VCs how you understand your customers, specific demographics, and who you're trying to target.
And why would they care? Why would an investor care that you know who your customer is?
Because they will confirm that you have done your research and you have a plan.
Good.
You're reducing the risk of the money that they're investing into you.
Exactly. It's going to be less risky for them because if you know who your customer is, you're going to be more specific and guided on where you're spending your money to acquire customers, right? So, okay, we got another comment here.
Hi, I'm Claudia. And I think that it will help you get through as well if you really care, because it seems like there will be really hard times as you're building a business.
Yeah.
And I personally, I'm an immigrant, and I want to build something for immigrants, and I think although that might be hard because it's very close to home, I think it gets you through because you know what it's been like to need a certain product or a certain business.
Great.
It just makes you care.
Yeah,
you know?
great. And if a company knows, or if a customer knows that a company cares about them sincerely, authentically, they're more inclined to use that product or service, right? So that's great. Okay, so this is, at Cotopaxi, when we launched our business, we haven't done these for a few years because of the pandemic, and then we may do them at some point again, but we have these events called Questivals, or these 24-hour adventure races. And we had teams that people could form of up to 6 people, and we give them hundreds of challenges they could go choose from that would involve doing good in the community, adventuring in the outdoors, and if you did hike a certain trail, or if you caught a fish or whatever, you get points. And then the winning teams would get gear and trips and other stuff. And so we ended up having these amazing events with thousands of people that would show up, and they'd go create thousands of social media posts about the product. And everyone that did the race got one of our backpacks. So they were using the product, posting it in social media, and so on. But we knew who our customer was before we sold anything. We knew exactly who the customer was, and we targeted that customer very specifically. And it's interesting, we targeted a very young consumer. A lot of college students, people just out of college, and we knew that people with more spending power actually were more like my age, 40s, So if you're 40, you could actually buy the expensive jacket, buy the travel bag. But these young people, even though they couldn't spend as much, they decided what was cool. I don't know what's cool anymore. So I look at you guys and I'm like, what are you guys wearing? What are you using? Like, you're looking at the younger people to decide what's cool. So we figured, that's going to be our beachhead. That's where our point of market entry is going to be young people that set trends. And then knowing that people with more money would come in and buy, but we're not going to go target the 40-something-year-old. Because if we do that, then the brand won't be cool anymore, right? So another example, in the baby business, one thing that we learned was that we sold all sorts of baby products, but diapers were interesting. If in their very first purchase, someone bought a size 4 or size 5 diaper, that means their child was probably getting close to 2 years old or maybe older. The chance of us making money from that customer over the lifetime of the customer was 0. Basically, we would never make money from that customer. But if we got a customer that their very first purchase was a size 0 diaper, a brand new baby, like they maybe hadn't even given birth yet, then we knew we'd make money from that customer over the lifetime. So it was important for us to understand that we're not just targeting moms. We need to target moms at the point of market entry. Like the moment that they're pregnant, they need to know about us, and we need to be building a relationship with them so they're buying their stroller and their car seat and the baby clothes and all that other stuff from us, not just the diapers. Because once the baby's older, they don't need to buy all that stuff anymore. They already have it. So then diapers were like a loss leader. We didn't make enough money from them. So again, understanding your customer is going to be critical to success. All right, let's see. All right, any questions about consumers and customers before we move on? Yes.
Thank you for being here. My name is Cynthia Gambo from Argentina, Buenos Aires. It could be
Porteña.
Claro. It could be worse. We could be doing this when Argentina is playing in about a couple hours. So,
sorry, Brazilians. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, is there any Brazilians? But anyway.
The score is still 0-0, I think. Who? Oh, Neymar just scored. Yes.
That's why I was late. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to this. Consumer.
By the way, can I just tell a quick joke?
Please.
So you're from Argentina.
Oh, sure.
So I lived in Brazil.
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires is an amazing city.
It's an amazing city.
It's an amazing city. You should all go at some point.
Should go.
So when I lived in Brazil, the Pope, a new Pope was selected, and he's from Argentina. Yes.
I know him growing up.
Oh, is that right?
But I'm not a Catholic, but I know him growing up.
Amazing. An amazing man. And the first time a Pope has ever been from Latin America. So everyone in Latin America is very excited. But Brazil and Argentina have a rivalry, right? So like, there's always a little bit of an edge, especially because of soccer, football. So
proud of it.
So in Brazil, the joke was, yes, we're so excited. The Pope is from Latin America. He's from Argentina. They said, but God is still Brazilian. So, there's always a little bit, you always have to have an edge in that argument.
Still going on. It's never going to stop.
Yeah. Anyway. So what's your question?
My question was, so you, from the very beginning, your mind was very much, you had a very altruistic mind. Philanthropy was important to you, and sort of based that as your core, of the organization. From an investment standpoint and from a customer acquisition standpoint. I think that there's different school of thoughts, right? Some companies are all about, hey, if I want to raise money, an investor is not going to care whether I'm aligned with some cause or not. It's cute, but it's not going to be something. What is your stand on that, and why, if that school of thought is true, why did you still pursue a very altruistic, a very philanthropic culture in your organization?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. A lot of investors won't care because their goal is to maximize their profits. It's, they've raised money from limited partners, and their job is to go make them money as much as possible. So it's true, some won't care, but some will. When I started Cotopaxi, I incorporated the business from inception as a benefit corporation. And the attorney I was using, he actually recommended that I not do that. He said, don't incorporate as a benefit corporation from the beginning, because no investor is going to want to invest in you before you've made money. And so he said, incorporate as a C Corp or as a normal business, and then you can convert to a benefit corporation later in the business's life when you've proven yourself. I didn't take the advice, even though it was maybe good advice. This is the end of 2013, so benefit corporations were very new. We were one of the first Delaware public benefit corporations. But I just figured if there's an investor that doesn't want to invest in our business because we're doing good, they're the wrong investor for us anyways. And so, when I pitched that first round, I mentioned I pitched 100 different investors, angel investors, impact investors, venture capitalists. We ended up finally getting an amazing investor to back us, a woman named Kirsten Green with 400 Ventures, an amazing investor, very well respected. And she led the round, and she believed in our purpose and our mission. She believed that that would make us a better business. And that's the argument I was making. It's not just I'm going to do good in the world, but I'm going to do good in the world because that's what I really believe in. But I also believe that doing good will be good for business. And I made a case, an argument, and that's your job as a founder, is to convince investors that what they're going to invest in is not going to just do good. You're going to build a great business for them. You're going to be able to create returns for them, but you're also going to be able to do good. Our second major investor was a woman named Ellie Wheeler from Graycroft in New York. Our next major investor, the investment was led by Lauren Iveson. Our next investment was led by a woman named Brooke Harley. And then our last investor at Bain Capital, the investment was led by Cecilia Chow. Did you guys catch a trend? They're women. Women backed our business when men wouldn't. I don't know how to explain it, because only like 4% of venture capital and partners are women. The only thing I can explain is that I think women better understand purpose in business than men. And they believed in us, and it shaped our business. We've had women on our board from day zero. We've had women in the most senior leadership roles in the company from day zero. And it shaped us. It's made us a better business. And so, yes, there are some investors that don't care about impact, but there are others that will and that do. And frankly, I think this is a movement that's begun. People care about this, and investors are caring more and more about impact, even men. So yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, yes. So let's go here, and then we have a question back there, too.
Quick question about customers. So in the industry that you're in, you say that you're going to the youth and trying to set trends, but within that, how do you know what they want? I mean, we heard about Steve Jobs and his approach of like, people don't know what they want, I build it for them, I have a vision for them, they will like it or not. But in your case, you're trying to find within the different profiles of customers, how do you know who's setting the trend, the colors, you have an idea with the different patches and all this. Mm-hmm. Did you test those? How did it go? How did it catch?
That's a really nice question. It's for my opinion is that it's a lot about guessing. So you're making guesses, and then you're following trends. When we launched Cotopaxi, we weren't a super crazy, colorful brand, like all that crazy mix of colors. That's not what we were. We launched the brand using remnant material. Like the first backpacks everyone used for that first Questival, the day that we launched the brand, all the bags were made of remnants, leftover materials, because that's the only way we could make it fast enough. We went to the factory and said, hey, we need to make all these bags, thousands of them. How fast can you make them? They said, well, you didn't have an ordered material, like or dyed it, or it's like, well, what do you have on hand? They're like, oh, we have all this extra material from all these other brands. So we used that, but most of the bags were one solid color. But then we started experimenting with some crazy patchwork of like, hey, let the sewers design the bags. Use any materials they want. The only rule we gave them was to make no bag alike. So you have a Cotopaxi bag like the fanny pack there. It's like, it's one of a kind. You know, no one else in the world has that bag because it was made of remnants. Every one of them is unique. And so we tested that. We made 500 of them. We put them on our website, and we like blew through it. Like in 24 hours, 500 were sold. Like we never sold that many before. And it's like, that's working. So a little bit of it is like testing, experimenting. Sometimes they fail. We've had some tests that didn't work at all. And so it's not that we magically knew what young people wanted. In fact, if we would have asked them, hey, would you buy something that's like crazy, colorful patchwork, they'd probably be like, no, I don't think I need that. You know, maybe to Steve Jobs' point. But once you start selling it and people buy it, you kind of learn. So, and you follow those trends. But you always have to be listening to the customer and be willing to change and adapt. So, okay, yeah. So we have this question here and then one over here as well.
My name is Kim. So we recently studied about the jobs to be done framework, you know, understanding your customer. So like for your company, Cotopaxi, like what would you say why people hire or, you know, buy your product?
Yeah,
like what's the reason why they hire Cotopaxi?
Yeah, I love this jobs to be done principle from Clayton Christensen. And so it's interesting. We are an outdoor brand. I tell my team all the time, we're not really an outdoor brand. We're not a backpack company. We're not a jacket company. What we are is a movement around using business to be a force for good in the world. That's the job to be done for us. Yes, people can travel with an awesome, the best travel bag on the planet. They can wear a really fun, colorful jacket. But at the end, what they're doing is they're supporting a mission, a purpose to go fight poverty and to do capitalism better. So we're transforming capitalism, and they can be part of that movement. So that's the way I see the job to be done for us. So yeah, thank you. Really nice question. All right.
My name is Christelle. And my question is how, when you were first starting your businesses and with the pool tables, how did you create relationships with factories overseas? Mm-hmm. How did you start that process?
Great. So I first, you know, I actually used a website called Alibaba, which no one knew what that, I didn't even know what that was. Like I just discovered it and it worked. Now everyone knows what Alibaba is because it's a massive company. But in 2003, 2004, like no one knew what that even was. So, but there's a lot of websites that have, like Alibaba or others, that you can go find manufacturers. Sometimes I'd even do Google searches, like I'd find other brands, like a pool tables like Brunswick, AMF, I'd find these other brands, and I'd go search on Chinese websites. So you can do a search like with the domains that end, you know, with whatever country you're going in. And I'd just do all sorts of random searches to see if I could find any website that said, hey, we make for Brunswick, or we make for this other brand. So that's how we started. That worked for a while. We had good suppliers, but not the best. And then what I ended up doing, actually, we were having some challenges with our quality. And I actually hired some BYU engineering students. They were studying manufacturing engineering. And they'd been missionaries in Taiwan, so they spoke Mandarin. And I told them that they could go live out at our factory, which is very luxurious. And they could live at our factory. They lived there. They ate there, they met, you know, they worked with the employees, the teams there, and we'd pay for their next semester's tuition if they would go do this. So as a startup, like we had no money, but this didn't cost a whole lot, but we had these hungry, like smart students that were like, they wanted an internship. They wanted an experience to go live in this part of the world, to go have experience on the ground, and they could come back, and then all of a sudden they could help, you know, they could get better jobs when they were graduating because they're like, hey, I actually lived in China. I worked at it and lived at a factory. I saw all these challenges, and those students actually helped us find and explore new factories. So they'd go out and travel around and visit some other factories as well. So that's kind of how we looked for that in the pool table business. With Cotopaxi, a little bit differently. We actually hired two of the founding team members were product designers. CJ was a pack designer. Cherie Sanguinetti, she was an amazing award-winning apparel designer in the outdoor industry. So they had relationships with factories already. And so we leveraged those relationships to get into factories that normally never would have done work for us because they're like, we're a brand new startup. Our minimums were like, we were making such small orders, like it didn't make sense for these big factories. But because they had an existing relationship, they were willing to do it. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. So maybe we can move on to the next topic, and I'm just going to have to look on I'll open up my computer and look at what the next topic was. Oh, innovation's the next one. Thank you, Saul. Okay, innovation. My very first class when I went to, so I after my pool table business, I went and did an MBA. All my entrepreneur friends thought I was crazy. Like, why would you go do an MBA after you've already had a business? And yeah, you have a question? Yeah.
Thanks. Just wondering about, we talked about the equity investors and things like that. How
Yeah.
does equity pay usually work? What does that look like in the business
For an
world?
employee.
So say you have an investor that you hired on through equity and they have now equity in your company. How
Okay.
do you go about?
So yeah, so an equity investor, the way it works, they'll put money into your business and you'll negotiate the price, the valuation of the business. Sometimes there's something called the convertible note or a safe. There's these other mechanisms that allow you to kind of kick the can down the road and you say, okay, you're investing, but we don't know what the price is yet, but we'll know like in a year, and whatever the price is in a year, you're going to get a discount backwards. You know, we'll set it at a lower price, but we don't know what the valuation is now, so we'll just kick that can down the road. So that's one way to do it. Oh, okay, thanks, Felix. But the way that it works is like they put the money in the business, and then they'll likely, if it's a big investor or the majority investor, they'll join your board. You'll create a board that helps govern the business, and they don't get paid anything. They're going to put a lot of time in your board and giving you advice and helping you along the way, and that you don't have to pay them a penny. In fact, they're paying you. They're putting all their money into your business, and then the way they get paid, compensated, is by the return. So hopefully in 5 or 7 or 10 years, whatever the number of years is, they're going to 10x their money, or 50x their money, or 3x their money, and that's why they put it in. But you don't have to pay them anything. So does that answer your question? Okay, great. So I mentioned innovation. So maybe let's. I was mentioning I went to business school. As an entrepreneur, went and did an MBA, which everyone thinks is crazy. It was the best thing I ever did. It was the best investment I ever made in myself. And yes, I could have spent 2 years building another business, but guess what? I had 50 years of my life left to go build businesses, but you only have this short little window of time to go do an MBA. And so for me, it was the most incredible way to go invest in myself and to build network and experiences and open my mind to new ideas. And so the very first class I took at Wharton, and Felix, if you'll go to the next slide. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the very first class I took at Wharton was an innovation class, and it blew my mind. It was so cool. We had a group about this size, maybe 40 people or so, 40 or 50 people, and everyone had to come to class the first day with 10 business ideas, and you had to submit them into a system the professor created called the Darwinator. And the Darwinator would allow us to go filter the worst ideas and the best ideas. And you'd get assigned 10 random ideas from your classmates, and you had to rate them. You didn't know who they belonged to, and they were very, like, one-sentence explanations of this business idea, and you had to rate it from 1 to 10. And then you'd get all your ideas back with a score from all your classmates, and you'd see which ideas had the best scores. And some of your ideas were awful, and some of them were a lot better. And then you go take your very favorite idea, and you go pitch it to the whole class in 1 minute with one slide. And everyone would vote. And then over the course of this class, we took about 500 ideas and we narrowed it down to 3 or 4 ideas. And every year in this class, there's a business that gets started that works. And it's really cool. And so what you see in this slide is a few things. So on the left side, this bar chart, you can see there's 234 opportunities generated by 47 people. The best ideas are 10. The worst is 1. So you can see, where do most ideas fall? Somewhere in the middle, right? Somewhere in the middle. Some are really bad, but there's some really good ideas. If you look on the right, the line chart there, you can see the number of ideas on the bottom axis, and on the top axis, you can see the quality of ideas. So what if you only come up with 10 ideas? What's your chance of having a really exceptional idea in that group? It's low. If you come up with 10 ideas, probably all 10 of those ideas are lousy, okay? What if you come up with 50 ideas? Look what happens. It starts climbing really quickly. What if you get to 100 ideas? Even better. You have better odds of having a great idea in that mix. Then your job is just to figure out which one it is. Now, what if you get to 300 ideas? Is it worth spending your time on that? No. It's still increasing, but at a diminishing rate. In fact, at some point, it's just you're wasting your time. You don't need to come up with 300 ideas. But it probably was worth coming up with 50 or 60 or 70 ideas. And you might want to set a process that's like, hey, I'm going to go spend 6 months. It's the end of the year today. By next summer, I want to have 60 ideas. And then I'm going to go spend the summer taking all those ideas and identifying the very best of the ideas. And if you run this process, you're going to increase your likelihood of success. This is the mistake I see most entrepreneurs make. Maybe one of the biggest mistakes I see entrepreneurs make is they don't spend enough time. Look, you're willing to commit your whole life, all your money, all your savings, all your time, and years of your life to an idea. Why not be really disciplined for a few months to make sure that you're getting the right idea to go spend all that time and money on? Okay? This also works internally. At Cotopaxi, every year we do a few innovation tournaments where a few weeks ahead of time, I'll give everyone in the company a challenge and say, this is the idea, or this is the challenge we're trying to solve. Come up with ideas. Everyone will come up with 10 ideas, and then we get together on a Zoom call. We go into breakout rooms, and 5 or 6 people in each breakout room, they go pitch their favorite ideas to their teammates. And then in an hour, they come back to the whole team with their favorite idea or two in 1 or 2 slides, and they go pitch those ideas to the whole company. And then everyone rates the ideas, and we end up with hundreds of ideas, and we end up narrowing it down to just a few. And we have one owner of the challenge that's in charge of documenting it all and implementing whatever idea is the best idea. And so these innovation tournaments are great as an entrepreneur trying to come up with a business idea, or inside of an organization to go innovate internally within an organization. And the interesting thing is, like one of our last innovation tournaments, the person that won was a 20-year-old woman in our warehouse. She picked and pulled product. And this was a product idea. She came up with the best product idea. You think the product team would have come up with the best product idea, right? Not the case. This is the beauty of an innovation tournament. It levels the playing field. The CEO is at the same level as a warehouse worker, as a retail staff, and we all come up with ideas together, and we choose the best ideas based on merit, not based on who's the most senior. And that just doesn't happen in an organization naturally, because there's hierarchy, and there's people feel intimidated. It's like, I'm not going to go tell the CEO that I have a better idea, because I feel, I'm brand new. I'm only right out of school. I don't know. And so I love this process, and I learned this again in business school, and I think it's so applicable no matter where you are in your startup journey. Okay, so we'll do some questions. We'll start over here and then kind of move back. So Lakers fan first.
You might go into this a little bit, so you can answer it later if it's more applicable, because I think there is a section on culture that you were planning to go over. But how did you, as you were growing, how did you build the culture where that sort of competition could actually happen and function well? And then if you came into a company that didn't necessarily have that culture, how would you shift it or go about shifting it?
Yeah, great.
Rather than just than just cutting everyone, right? Like other than starting from nothing.
So I think building culture, it's all about creating rituals and traditions. And so with Cotopaxi, one of our 3 core values as a business, our core values are people, adventure, and innovation. So we have all sorts of really fun, crazy rituals and traditions built around each of those 3. And innovation, one of the traditions that we have is around this innovation tournament. We've been doing this innovation tournament since we had 6 people in the company. And now we have 350. So it's like, it's evolved a little bit. It's a little more complex with more people, but we have more ideas and better ideas. So a lot of it is identifying whatever culture you want to create, you do it by creating these rituals and traditions, which end up shaping behavior, which ends up creating culture, which ends up creating outcomes. So if you're not getting the outcomes you want, it's because you haven't done a good job with the other things. And so now, when you have an existing company that maybe hasn't done this from day one, how do you do that? It's interesting. The last year I bought, that pool table business, I sold it 11 or 12 years ago. Last year I bought it back. And it's the same business. I paid a lot more for it than I sold it for. I did it backwards. You're not supposed to do it that way. But I believed in the business, and I believed there was an opportunity to do better with the business. And the day that I bought it, I converted it to a benefit corporation. And I haven't taken a penny out of the business, and we've made a big commitment, financial commitment, over the next 3 years to a nonprofit that I love that's supporting poverty alleviation. And as part of this acquisition, I had to we had to rethink everything. Like, how do we go build a business that's built around doing good? When I built that business in the first place, I didn't, because I didn't know how to marry doing good and doing business. I know how to do it now. And so I had to go figure that out. And it's been a challenge, but it's working. And but it takes going to the whole team. And it's not just from the top down. It's not just saying, hey, everyone, this is what we're going to do. We've involved everyone in the company and said, hey, how are we going to go do this? What is our mission? What do we want to go accomplish? What should our core values be? And they were all part of that process. What traditions do we want to go create? And so I think that's how you go create culture, is not top down. It's involving everyone and helping form that vision and inspiring people to go join you in doing that. Yeah, thank you. Really great question. All right, the man with the great beard. Let's do it. That's a 10 out of 10, man. That's really good.
Davis, thanks so much for hosting this and innovating or giving this opportunity to brainstorm so much. My name is Garrett. I wanted to get back to what you were talking about with developing ideas. You said take a few months and be disciplined in developing those ideas. I wanted to get pick your brain a little bit about what that looks like. I guess in my brain, I'm thinking like going through a search engine and I've got this filter and I'm going, well, I don't want these things, but I do want these things. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so when I did this, I ran this process when we identified the business in Brazil to go do it. My cousin and I did it together. I find a lot of value in doing it with somebody else. The challenge is what I talked about in the very beginning, which is co-founders. It's like, how are you choosing your co-founder before you even know what the idea is? I generally think that's not the right approach. So how do you go brainstorm with someone, but you're not going to be co-founders? I don't know. You're going to have to figure that out. But I think brainstorming with someone else is really valuable. Once you have the ideas, I would say don't marry yourself to any one idea too early. It's great to be really passionate and excited about an idea, but kind of put it on the back burner. Keep it warm, but like don't spend too much time on it until you go through that whole process. Once you have enough ideas and you kind of reach that, I would recommend setting a date and saying, by this date, I'm going to start this next step of the process, which is eliminating ideas. And that's when you can start creating filters. There's no filters beforehand. You don't eliminate anything. I would recommend not even like narrow it down by industry or size of business or anything. Just brainstorm. And then at the next phase, you can set some parameters of like, okay, for us, we wanted to build something bigger. We'd built the pool table business. It was a great business, but we wanted to build something that could be much bigger. We wanted to raise venture capital. We wanted to have that experience. We didn't know what that was like. And so we had these goals, and it was like, okay, it needs to be something that could be venture-backed, which means we need to be able to do $100 million in revenue within 5 or 7 years. We kind of, again, set all these different parameters. Then we went through all the ideas and said, okay, which ones meet these parameters? And we started eliminating ones that didn't. To be really clear, though, no one here needs to go build a venture-backed business. No one here needs to go build a $100 million business. It is amazing to just go build a small business. That pool table business, it was a small little business. It is so fun. There's like 20 employees. I know everyone. They all know me. Like, it is really special. You might go build a business that has 2 employees, or maybe it's just you forever. That's awesome. You don't need to go build something that gets backed by venture capitalists. You should be really proud of anything that you go build that supports you, and it supports your ability to go do the things that you love and want. And so don't feel pressure to go build something massive. But if you want to go have, even if it's a small business, you can go do that by running these same processes. It might help you build a $1 billion business, or it might help you build a business that gets to $500,000 in revenue at some point. That would be amazing. And so that supports your family. And so, again, don't feel pressure to build a certain type of business. Go build something that you love, that you're going to just be super passionate about, that allows you to be you and to focus on the things that you like doing. So, all right, let's go to these 2 people back here.
Thank you again for hosting this, but I wanted to
ask... And your introduction.
Oh, sorry. My name's Jonathan.
Okay.
I'm a student out here, but you mentioned something in the last sentence you said about passion and building something you're passionate about. And I don't, when building Cotopaxi, I don't know if you were particularly, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I don't know if you were passionate about fashion, but you were passionate about doing good, and you use fashion as a lever to be able to do good. When building a business, how do you how do you find out the right balance between doing something that you're passionate about versus something that has a need and has customers? And can you do both, or do you need to go back, pick one?
Yeah, thank you. This is a question I've asked myself, actually. My first business, the pool table business, I knew nothing about pool tables. I'm not very passionate about pool tables. I don't even really know how to play pool that well. But what I loved was building my own thing. And I was so passionate about it because it was mine. I created it out of nothing. And because of that, I was so passionate about it. I still am so passionate about it. And same with the baby business in Brazil. It's like, who gets that excited about diapers and baby strollers and stuff? Like, not that excited about it, but I was a dad, and so I knew some of the product, but I loved building this cool company. And then with Cotopaxi, it was a little different because I actually did have a lot of passion around the adventure and outdoors. Not so much fashion, but love the outdoors, love adventure. And of course, the thing that I was most passionate about was impact. And so when I could weave those things into a business, that was really fun. And it's made it even more enjoyable than I ever thought it could be. As much as I love the other things, like this is like 100 times more fulfilling because of the mission and the purpose. And I wake up every morning, that's what I'm thinking about. It's like, that's why I'm here, right? It's like, I could be going out and building my business, but it's like, I'm here because I love this. I love being with all of you and helping share the lessons that I've learned along the way and helping make sure that we have a more diverse and better startup community here in Utah. And so, yeah, I'd say, I guess the answer is, it doesn't have to be something that you are like super obsessed about. But it should be, if it's something that you are really passionate about, it makes it that much more rewarding. So, all right. Hey, Ryan Bastian, how are you? One of our early employees, one of our very first. All right. Okay, next question.
So my question will go a little bit along line with the same question, but it's a little bit on the side of experience. So the question that you just responded was based on a passion on deciding what type of business you want to choose. Either you have a passion or it's something you just have a business type of minded person. So my question is more about, okay, if you want to start a business, sometimes you have an idea, but that idea is at another industry that you have no idea how it looks like. Maybe you're a sales guy, maybe you're more like business or customer relationship type of guy, but you're thinking about something that is in a tech spot. But do you have to go for it as a startup founder, or do you have just to focus on something that you have a little bit more experience on? How do you deal? The question actually is, how do you deal with starting a business that you don't have any experience into, like the industry specifically?
Yeah, great. Obviously, if you have some experience, it's an advantage, but certainly you don't need it. When I started my first business, I knew nothing about business at all, let alone about the industry I was in, or e-commerce was very new. I knew nothing about that, but I think what great founders do is they bring people around them to help them solve problems, and they have expertise that they don't. And so part of it is going to be you kind of learning that industry, and I kind of talk about becoming an understudy. I would obsess, like when we started the business in Brazil, there was no one on the planet that knew more about the baby industry in Brazil. Like, I read every report ever written, I read every article ever written, like every data point I could possibly find about the baby industry in Brazil, I knew it. And when I went and fundraised, it was clear to investors that I knew that space. And so for you, whatever industry you choose, like, it's your job to go become like an understudy of the best and the brightest in that industry, to go become an expert. But you're probably not going to be an expert yet. And so kind of bringing people around you that can help you understand it better is going to be a big advantage. But sometimes you don't have the resources to do that, right? Or, just as a reminder, like with Cotopaxi, that founding team, no one got paid anything, right? It was like people worked for free, or they documented their hours and they were going to get money later if we raised capital. If we didn't raise capital, no one got anything. And so there's creative ways. If you're like, hey, I have no money, I can't pay people to join me. Well, go have a creative structure that allows them to get upside if the business works. Those early employees, they had equity, like they did pretty well. So like those free hours they gave in that first year of the business was like, it was worth it, right? So go create a structure that can incentivize people to come even if you don't have capital. So, all right. We have a question in the very, very back. By the way,
Thank you.
We have 12 minutes. I'm probably not going to get through everything, but we'll see.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's great.
Just a question. So given the...
Sorry, what's your name?
Oh, sorry. I'm Sandra, and my question has to do with the diversity that we're seeking in this forum. Oftentimes, underrepresented women and migrant populations do come later in life than the sort of standard college tech startup group. So do you have any advice for how these communities can actually get access to the resources that tend to be mostly focused on college campuses?
Yeah, really great. That's a really great point. You know, it's interesting. I don't know the data for all immigrants, but I know for refugees start businesses at a higher rate than native-born Americans. All immigrants. It doesn't surprise me. Immigrants start businesses at a higher rate than native-born Americans, and it's like not by a little bit; it's by a lot. They're very. Spencer, do you have?
60% of unicorns are started by immigrants.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I did see that. This is recent, right? 60% of all unicorns in the United States have a immigrant founder or co-founder. A unicorn is $1 billion business that's not public, it's privately owned, and it's a $1 billion company. And so, guess what? 60% of the US population is not immigrants. It's a smaller percentage, but they are starting businesses at a high rate. But there are some unique challenges, right? I mean, if you've immigrated here and you're 35 or 55, like you're not going to be in college, you're not going to be surrounded by all these resources. But there are some great resources, like the Suazo Business Center here in Utah. It focuses on the Latino community and helps them start businesses. There's a lot of resources that exist. There's Spice Kitchen is a great one that encourages immigrant, mostly refugee food entrepreneurs to start their own food business. I know a few years ago I had my 40th birthday party, and we had the whole thing was catered by refugee food entrepreneurs, and we raised money for these, for refugees. It was really amazing. And I know Natalie was there, and Desange was there. So yeah, there's great resources.
I was just going to add that Utah does lag behind the national average of immigrant-owned businesses, so we do have work to do there, and that's why forums like this are so important to uplift entrepreneurs who are giving back and who are helping others understand the landscape, but also the service providers that exist within the state and especially within this area who can help too. And so the state is a great resource to point you in the right direction, and then there's the Salt Lake Community College and so many others that are there as well.
Yeah, the Salt Lake Community College, the one off I-15 there in Sandy has.
The mill.
Yeah,
The mill.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right here. Yeah. So how can they get involved there? What resources are there?
So we teach early stage startup classes called Everyday Entrepreneur, all the way up to Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses. We have a small business incubator. We have global expansion courses to take your business internationally. We have the Small Business Development Center where you can sit down and meet with for free with a business advisor. And we're really focused, 40% of our incubator are minorities, and most of our Everyday Entrepreneur classes are minorities. So.
Fantastic. And so if they want to go participate in those, where would they go?
The mill at slcc.com.
The mill at slcc.com.
The mill at slcc.com, or come see me.
Okay. Okay, great.
I'll put one more plug in that we work on a New Americans task force that really focuses on economic opportunity, and small business is one of those areas. And so we're going to be putting together a New American Business Symposium in 2023 that will likely be connected to the One Utah Summit. So we really just want to, or other economic development forums around the state as well. So stay connected. Look for us on LinkedIn, the Mill, and all of our other kind of partners that are part of social media, because that's really where you'll find out a lot about these resources and upcoming opportunities for funding, for technical assistance, for support, for so many other things too.
Yeah, great. Okay. We have one other question here. Yeah.
Just a question to follow up that. When you say new Americans, is that new citizens or permanent residents as well?
No, thanks for asking. So new Americans is a term that is used nationally that we've adopted here in Utah that is meant to be inclusive of all immigrants, regardless of the pathway that you've come in. So that's immigrants, that's international students, that's refugees, that's employment visa holders, across the gamut, documented, undocumented. So we just want to make sure that that's one term that is not exclusionary to any one immigrant population, but that's inclusive of everyone, and regardless of the amount of time that you've been here. People have been here for 10, 15 years versus newer arrivals or those that we're welcoming more recently.
Great. Okay. Isn't this a cool group? Yeah, this is amazing. Okay, we got another question back here. What's your name?
My name is Kombi. I got a question for her. So I'm a refugee myself, but one thing that I have a question for her is that I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York, as you guys know, it was successful in the 50s and then companies left. But recently, in the next 20 years, a lot of immigrants have flown to Buffalo, and Buffalo has just been booming with refugees from Thailand, Africa, the Middle East, and etc. But one thing I realized is that even my own parents, they're like, refugees don't get involved. Like, they don't get involved into like the things that matter, such as like, okay, politics. How do we change certain stuff? Or like, if there's a parents-teacher conference at school, I remember my school. It was an international school, so yeah. So there were like maybe 4 kids that would show up, and the school had like 900 kids. And I realized that I talked to some of like the principals and the local leaders in the city. They told me that we have a high population of refugees, but they don't get involved into like those stuff that matters. So my question is, how can more refugees and international parents and students, I mean parents mostly, get involved? Because someone like me, like I came here when I was 9 years old, I kind of grew up here, so I understand that like, okay, for change to happen, I need to get involved in these kind of aspects. But how can our parents get involved in that?
Yeah. Well, we probably have the best person in the state to answer this question here. So Natalie used to run, she's working obviously with the governor's office now, but she used to run the International Rescue Committee here in Salt Lake. And so maybe we can give her some time. Also, you should talk to this young woman that's 2 people away from you, Dasan. She is a model of a refugee immersed in the community. She wrote a book recently, which I've read, amazing, and she's done some amazing things, so you should talk to her. But let's have Natalie talk.
I mean, I would love to have the person that you're referring to, so I can't see you around the corner, but
yeah.
speak first, because that's probably the most important voice.
Yeah.
I will say that there are leadership academies. There's different things that exist within the community that that probably could be made more widespread to offer different times, different opportunities to engage there. But I would be happy to speak with you with some ideas afterwards. But really, it's about, from the education piece, is join your PTA and your community councils, and that's where it really begins, is when you see the issues happening in your schools or with young people around you, is to start to be that voice and lift it up to your administrators, teachers, and so on, and then you start to build the case. There are a lot of advocates within the state and within this community here that can help point you in the right direction too, and I'm happy to chat afterwards.
Great.
Definitely, I agree on that too. I also would say, especially for parents to get involved in schools and stuff, that has been an issue in Utah community also, mainly because parents, it's hard for them to speak the language. They don't speak English. So even if they go there, it's hard for them like to understand what they are saying. I know that Utah International High School has like put on like translator and stuff like that, but it's still hard for the parents like to get involved within the youth like school and stuff like that. So I would say definitely maybe how can we come up with, how can we get the parents involved, but maybe have a parent conference somehow where it's like maybe a group or something like that, and like give them a time, because like they're working so hard also. That's another thing. The youth are like being a part of, they're leading their family because their parents, they don't know the language. So like doctor's appointment, the youth has to be there. In a way also youth miss on their youthness or to do things because they're taking on the parents' role within the household.
Great. Thank you, Dasanj. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. I didn't get through everything, but we got through a lot. And I think we had some really fun conversations. I hope you guys enjoyed coming. I have a challenge for each of you. And that is to share some of what you've learned with someone else, and also to meet some people in this room that you can build into your network. Pull out LinkedIn, get each other's names, connect with each other, and find ways to continue building those relationships. This is a special, this looks a little different than a lot of the startup events that I go to. Isn't it different, Felix? This is good. Let's get a picture. So let's wrap things up, but thank you all for coming. This means a lot to me. Thanks for spending 2 hours, it's a lot of time. You're probably ready to stretch and move a little bit, but thank you for coming. It was my pleasure to be here, so thank you.